One of the kind of funny things about the Switch is how it has become the new home for a lot of Wii U titles that didn't really get the chance they needed on their original system because, well, no one really bought the Wii U, at least not enough people. And over the last few years, most of the really high-profile games have made their way over. We've got a couple left that have just recently been announced, like Super Mario 3D World, Pikmin 3 is on its way soon, and there are some games that haven't gotten straight-up ports, but basically got replaced by proper sequels, like with Splatoon, Smash Bros., and Mario Maker. There are still, however, a handful of games left that are just locked permanently on the Wii U that I think could really use an extra shot on the Switch. We're at the point now where they're not necessarily all the best-reviewed games on the Wii U, and in some cases they would just be very difficult to port because they would make such heavy use of the Wii U gamepad, but I would just love to see them get another chance with the Switch. Now again, I want to mostly focus on those games that are just completely locked on the Wii U. There are a couple games that have already received ports to other systems, like Yoshi's Woolly World being on the 3DS, Sonic the Lost World going to PC, but there is one game that isn't truly locked to the Wii U, an elephant in the room I think we got to talk about right away, which is of course the Zelda HD remasters. The Wii U never really got its own mainline Zelda game until Breath of the Wild, which, let's face it, is much more heavily associated with the Switch. But what it did get was some excellent HD remasters of Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Both of these games looked great on their original platforms, but they both benefited a lot from the resolution bump the Wii U could afford them, and that would just go over even better on the Switch, where you could then play them handheld or still on TV if you prefer. And so there's already a lot of hopes that these games are going to come together as some kind of collection on the Switch, maybe also offering Skyward Sword, which is another rumor that's been going on lately, and of course, a lot of other 3D Zelda games have gotten remasters, like with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the 3DS. Personally, I'm kind of surprised those haven't made their way to the Switch yet. There are other ways you can play these games aside from the Wii U. Of course, there are the original versions available on the GameCube, but especially with how much older games have kind of been rising in prices lately and needing to set up an old system, there is something very, very appealing about making these titles available on a current platform that's just going to look much better. Now, let's talk about some games that are actually locked onto just the Wii U. And again, in some of these cases, it'd be a little weird and awkward to port them because of how they relied on the use of kind of intermixing TV gameplay with the gamepad, but I feel like there's a way you could make some of these work. And one of the first ones I really want to talk about is Nintendo Land. One of my favorite things that Nintendo has done with some of their later systems that got more experimental with weird control schemes was introducing fun, minigame-focused games that illustrated why these new control schemes were fun and interesting. This was a big success on the Wii with Wii Sports, and the Wii U equivalent was Nintendo Land. It was this whole theme park-style game where you would go through different rides and play different minigames that would take advantage of using the combination of your TV and the Wii U gamepad. Now, there were a few different minigames in Nintendo Land, but the ones that I think really did an excellent job of showcasing how the Wii U could be fun, and I would love to have playable in some new form, were the asymmetrical competitive games that it offered. Specifically, a Mario tag game where multiple players work together to try and corner a Mario player and take him down, and a Luigi's Mansion style game where 4 players work together to try and fend off against a single ghost player that was just messing with all of them. I realize this is kind of a convoluted idea, and it would be much easier to just say, hey, rehook up the Wii U and call it a day, but I would really love for more people to get the chance to actually experience these games instead of having to actually track down and rebuy a Wii U at this point. Really, if anything, I think the best way to go about it is just make some kind of new Nintendo Switch Land, which reinvents some of these mini-games, as well as inventing new ones and making it all work on the Switch platform. That would be amazing. Now, while Nintendo Land is a great pitch for what was cool about the Wii U gamepad, there are some other titles from the Wii U where gamepad controls just didn't really work out. And I really think those games could use another shot where, a revised, simpler, more traditional control scheme could end up working out a lot better. And a perfect example of this is Star Fox Zero. Now, the control scheme was not the only problem that Star Fox Zero had. It was a little on the short side, and a lot of the levels did feel like you were just basically doing remixes of older Star Fox games, but by themselves, those aren't really the worst issues out there. You could still have a lot of potential fun with this game, it's just that the control scheme was so infuriating on the Wii U. So if a Switch version of this game was made that was a little more refined and actually controlled and felt great, I think it could end up redeeming itself a lot in the eyes of a lot of players out there. That, or maybe we just get a new Star Fox game in general, I would also be fine with that. That is a series that I really want a new one to live up to 64, or at least get close to it, because I love that game so much. And while I haven't necessarily hated any of the Star Fox games after that, they just always find ways of just coming up a little too short. While we're at it, I guess they could find a way to also rework Star Fox Guard to work on the Switch as well and just bundle it together. That's fine. Really, I just want a new Star Fox game. Speaking of games that don't live up to the rest of the franchise, let's talk about Paper Mario. The Paper Mario franchise has always found itself in this odd position, and this came up again recently with the release of Origami King, where, look, at the end of the day, each game individually, they've all been fun. It's just that they don't necessarily live up to what a lot of the fans of the original two games would like them to be, which is a very valid concern. That being said, they still have been some excellently fun titles, and that's why they should really bring back Paper Mario Color Splash for the Switch. This is a Paper Mario game that is completely locked to the Wii U. There is no other way to play this title, and while it is not the best Paper Mario game, it's not the worst either. Sticker Star does exist as well, and again, on its own, it is still a fun, enjoyable game, and great looking to top that off. I think the best way for this to really work actually is if we could take the same approach that we are seeing with Super Mario 3D All-Stars and what people are hoping to see happen with a Zelda HD collection, where we could get some kind of Switch collection that brings together a bunch of past Paper Mario games. Now what's weird about that is that there are quite a few games to work with, not counting Origami King, which is of course on the Switch already. There are 6 other Paper Mario games, so getting them all together in one collection might be a little bit much. But specifically, I would love to see Color Splash made available in some other way because, again, while I really liked the Wii U and I think it's great to play games on that, obviously not everyone got the chance or even gave the chance to a lot of games on there to play, and so putting it on the Switch would be awesome. One last first-party franchise that has a game locked on the Wii U is Kirby, with Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. Now this is a little different from traditional Kirby games. This was something that was kind of a side spin-off series that did things differently, that started with Kirby Canvas Curse on the DS. Now these Kirby games are not traditional mainline Kirby titles, they are their own kind of weird spin-off thing, and the idea is that it's a claymation Kirby game where you have to make use of touchscreen controls to create a safe path for Kirby to roll over, as well as creating ramps for him to jump off of and do all other kinds of fun stuff. Of course, what makes this one a more difficult one to port is its heavy reliance on touchscreen controls, which, to be fair, the Switch does have. You just can only do that in handheld mode. You wouldn't be able to play it docked. They could implement some kind of dock control scheme, but it would definitely be a lot more awkward than the kind of free control you have of just touching the screen and moving your finger to create these pathways. But to be fair, there are titles, at least indie ones, that do have that predicament of being handheld mode only, and I'd be fine with it, to be honest. Next, let's move away from first-party stuff and talk about a third-party release that is still locked to just the Wii U, and that's Fatal Frame Maiden of the Blackwater. Now, to be perfectly honest, kind of like with Star Fox Zero and Color Splash, Maiden of the Blackwater is not exactly the best game in the Fatal Frame franchise, but look, this is a genre we don't exactly get a lot of anymore. I mean, Resident Evil's kind of the one big, still continuing successful Japanese horror game, and it's not really the same thing because of its heavy focus on just, zombies and survival and not necessarily just weird, creepy, supernatural stuff. And I want more games like that. So getting this one, and really while we're at it, let's just bundle it with the Wii version and bring them both to the Switch. That'd be nice. Now there's one game I've been saving for last because aside from a Zelda HD collection, I feel like this is one of the other really obvious titles and a much higher profile one that people have been looking for, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now X is not exactly the same thing as Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, those are much more kind of traditional story-driven RPGs, which X has going on, but it also has you creating your own character, and it's a little more kind of mission structure driven. It's a different style of game in a couple different ways, but that doesn't change the fact that the Xenoblade series has been getting a really big resurgence on the Switch. 2 was a big success. They did the definitive edition of 1, which a lot of people picked up, and that just, I think, all points towards Monolith should just go ahead, bring X along as well. I feel like every time people talk about games that are left on the Wii U and what could still be ported to the Switch, that was always one of the main recurring titles alongside Pikmin 3 and Super Mario 3D World, and those ones are now happening, so this is really, I think, the last big high-profile title that's only on the Wii U that could really use a Switch port. Those are all the games trapped right now on the Wii U that I would love to see get Switch ports. I'm sure there are more out there that you guys would love to see, so make sure to let me know down below in the comments what other Wii U titles you'd love another chance to play on a current gen system, and I'll see you guys later.